Welcome back to Beyond Stereo, the Dolby Atmos podcast. I'm Dan Bucknell, and here we talk about the world of immersive technologies aimed at creating a more meaningful and emotional experience for music, film, and just about everything else. Okay, today we've got Sumantri Limin, all the way from Jakarta, is it?
Yes, Jakarta, Indonesia.
Beautiful. Welcome.
How are you, man?
Good, man. How are you?
Yeah, early day, been up since, I woke up at 5, I think. Yeah.
5. Wow. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. I'm always up around that time. So, I'm an early guy, man.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, I've got the kids, so it's 7:30 for me pretty much most days as well.
Okay. When did you start this podcast, by the way?
It's been an idea for a while, but
right.
It's pretty recent. Yeah. I mean, I've only released one, and then I've booked about 10. So I've got some pretty cool guests coming on, obviously yourself as well. But there's a couple internationals, and then we've got filmmakers and musicians and audio engineers and things like that from pretty much any area of creative, work. Just a huge range.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, talking about this thing.
Cool.
It's not just about Dolby Atmos too. It's about everything.
Just anything audio, basically.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, or anything immersive. Just like that could be storytelling. Yeah. Tell everyone a little bit about what you do and how you got into audio, and just give me the full rundown.
Okay. Well, my name is Sumantri, and I'm from Jakarta, Indonesia. And I also go by the name of Sumo Beat. That's kind of like my producing. That's my music, kind of my music profile name thing. I've been doing music production since officially from 1999, actually.
Cool.
And I started my career back in the States, and was doing a lot of dance music stuff during the late 90s, and I started doing a lot of pop and more industry stuff in like the early 2000s in Indonesia when I came back here.
Right. So you were living in the States?
I lived in the States since 89 up until 2003.
Okay.
And then I came back here and basically got into the official music industry here in Indo in 2003. And ever since I've been doing a lot of in overall it's all like a complete music production process. So it's music arrangement, mixing, mastering, recording, things like that. Yeah. And that's basically what's been going on for the past 20 years.
Beautiful. That's awesome. So that's a long time.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Yes.
Yeah, I know you've been doing some post-production stuff as well. I think I saw.
Well, yeah, it's semi post-production. I recently worked on an ad. It started out more. Well, it was a complete production thing. It's music. It's both music and also on the mix side. So I worked on the advertisement jingle, and also the mix for theaters. Because they were planning on playing it in all the movie theaters, so I had to do some immersive mix on it.
That's amazing. What format was that in?
Actually, it was Atmos.
It was Atmos. Wow.
It was a full Atmos. Yeah, it was in a full Atmos format. Yeah.
That's amazing. So immersive for cinemas is quite an ordeal.
Yeah, and it was actually the first time that any actual. First time for a product to actually do that in Indo, It was for a stationery company out of China, and they were doing this campaign for the local market. So their plan was to have it released in theaters and stuff like that. At least options so that let's say they have so they can play in a Dolby Atmos equipped theaters here as well. Besides the 7.1 and 5.1.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
Yeah.
How did you get into the whole Dolby Atmos thing?
So what happened was during the pandemic, a friend of mine, I'll tell you the you want the complete story, or like you want like the censored story?
Yeah, give me the full one. Cut it out if we need to.
Okay, so how it started? Basically, it was the pandemic, and everybody was just at home, la la la, and there weren't as many productions going on, right? And then I think it was 2000, mid 2022 or something like that. I was working on some stuff, and like my speaker blew out in the studio, and so I went ahead and purchased a brand new pair of speakers. I bought the Neumann, the KH120, I think, or the 180, the big ones.
Yep.
Right. So I bought a pair of those, and after I bought those, I contacted my engineer guy, who basically set up the studio. I'm like, yo, I just bought this brand new speakers, man. They sound really good. And then the guy was like, go return it. I was like, why? He was like, yeah, go Atmos. I'm like, why? He's like, trust me, just go Atmos. I'm like, well, this pair of speakers, they cost a lot, but I'm gonna end up spending more than these speakers, right? He's like, well, I don't care, go buy them. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, just trust me. So apparently he had gotten on the I think Dolby had like an online thing mid 2022, right? And they were introducing the whole Atmos thing, the whole spatial audio thing. It was an Apple thing, or I don't know if it was an Apple thing or a Dolby thing, but I think it was both or something like that. And so, since he was part of a music label, he got invited into the forum, on the online forum, and he immediately was like, "Okay, bro, you got to go Atmos," and it kind of made sense, but it didn't because of the cost, the costing, right?
It's very expensive.
Like, yeah, it's like we're all used to buying stereo pair of speakers. Now we're like, okay, let's go buy 12 of them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so, what I did was, at the end, I returned the pair and purchased these ones right here in the back, and had him install the whole system, and basically it was quite interesting at the same time, because I figured that trying a multi-channel thing versus stereo, well, the pandemic itself, right? It was like nothing much was going on, so I guess it was kind of like it was a good moment for me to try something new.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of like besides the whole technical aspect, like the future promises and things like that in terms of audio. Besides all that stuff, I was like, okay, it might be kind of fun to like try new things out.
Yeah.
And,
well, I mean, that's the reason we're in this industry, probably. That to start with. So that's definitely important.
Yeah.
Just do it because it's awesome.
Exactly. Right. And I'm glad that I kind of did it that way, instead of like having to, buy 12 speakers, and because that would actually add more pressure to actually learning the system, right?
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. But then again, I eventually did develop that sort of pressure in the beginning, because here we have these 12 pairs, there's 12 speakers in the studio, and I'm like, okay, I gotta get it right. And remember our conversations last year or so?
Yes.
I kept asking like, hey, how you do this, how you do that, right? So that was kind of like my endeavor to like, master it, I guess.
Yes. How did you go in the end? Do you feel a bit more comfortable now?
Oh yeah, but then it's like it's an ever growing thing, right? No one's actually there's no one's actually stamping like the correct way of doing things in terms of Atmos, right?
True.
So it's like a constant learning process for me,
Yeah.
But then again, I managed to make my mixes at least sound proper in the headphones,
That's
as
a hard thing
compared to like
do.
my first mix,
Yeah, no, for sure. Right? I mean, that's especially a whole learning curve on its own.
Binaural settings.
Yeah.
I remember my first gig, my first Atmos client. I mean, I did it for free, obviously, because I didn't know what I was doing, right? And the client was a friend of mine as well.
Yep.
So okay, he wanted to try it. I want to try it. Okay, so let's go, right? And so it kind of sounded okay on Apple Music, right? But it's not okay. It's
Yeah,
technically it's so wrong. You know,
sure.
but
But
we
that's
all
part
learn
of it.
from stuff like that, right?
Right. Yeah. That's
You know,
100% part of it.
yeah. So I guess it's like having it's like you go to the shop, and you just buy like a new bike or like something like that. You try to learn how to use it, you know, and once you're comfy with it, then you can go, race with it or stuff like that. It kind of makes you feel like a little kid again,
Yeah, actually, that's a really interesting point right there. Because like when I first started
Yeah.
the Atmos thing, I think it was. I mean, I was very interested in it. I was already doing 5.1 and
Mm.
mixing for film, so I was kind of aware that it was becoming a thing. And then as soon as the Apple Music spatial audio thing came out, that was just like a no-brainer. I was like, okay, this is actually going everywhere now, and I've got to jump on board. It's just too cool. So I started,
Right.
going into it. That's a couple of years ago now, maybe 3 to 4 years ago now. And now I'm mixing pretty much everything in Dolby Atmos, no matter the deliverable. It doesn't matter if it's a 5.1 project, stereo, if it's never going to see spatial, doesn't matter. I'm mixing it in Atmos no matter what. So that's just become my
Okay.
workflow. Yeah. And I love it. It's just
So,
fun.
but like, so were you mixing music material anyways, like during your movie experience?
Yes. Yeah. I started with the music side of things. It was really like I've been
Okay.
recording and mixing for maybe since I was like 11. I think I recorded, like I wrote and recorded my first album, like on my own solo thing, and it was terrible. You can't find it anywhere, luckily. But yeah, when I was 11, so that really took off. I kept just going at it, and I've released a few albums throughout. But it was more for fun. It was more just to learn than to sort of
Right.
serious artist. But then, I sort of just developed a love for how to do that along the way. And then I guess I'm an audio engineer, and that's sort of where it went.
Right.
And films was just an evolution of that. So really I started with music, and then film took me through surround, and then eventually ended up at Atmos, and now everything's Atmos again. So it's awesome. Definitely know what you mean. Feeling like a little kid though, just on a brand new playground, just a million different things to explore. That's definitely how I still feel about Atmos. It's amazing.
Yeah, but you definitely had a head start though, because you have the post experience, right?
Yeah, definitely.
For a lot of us, like music guys, like the whole 12 channel thing was just like, whoa, what is going on here?
Yeah, it's a lot more than two.
And like, yeah, our perception of what, because like a stereo field versus like a like a 3D immersive field, right? It's so different.
Definitely. Well, even
Sometimes,
from stereo to
like
5.1 is insanely different when you get used to that.
Right.
Straight to Atmos, I can't imagine that must have been like a massive, wow, what do I do with this?
Right. Once you go Atmos or like anything, like you don't go back to stereo, at least for me.
100%. Everyone I talk to says that. Yeah. I was going to say, maybe let's get into some fun stuff about maybe some of the equipment that you've chosen to use in your studio, or some of the plugins that you like for Atmos. And I think the reason, obviously, is I'll just sort of weight this down with this concept that I don't think it matters that much which equipment you use. There are many ways to do this. But, so for anyone listening, it's not like I'm just saying go and get this stuff now. It's whatever you can make work. But I thought it'd just be interesting to talk about some of your favorites.
I think most of my plugins are like the go-to plugins, from the stereo field, and basically they pretty much stay the same, I think.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, like my go-to plugins, one of them is actually like the fat filter stuff. The Pro Q and the compressor and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So the Pro Q, fortunately, it comes in like the immersive format, right? So that's convenient to have, right?
Definitely.
The immersive version, I use it on the buses
Of
usually.
course.
Let's say I want to EQ my reverb or stuff like that, right? On the 714 bus, for example, you can use that plugin.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
I use it on my drum bus as well. So okay, so how I usually do I'm just gonna like describe my
Yeah,
session,
break it
right?
down.
So I've been working mostly on on Pro Tools. Um, I've been doing a lot of mixed buses. Okay, for let's say like a drum. So the drum bus would be like a 7/0 format. Okay, and then the instruments would be like a 7/0 or 7/04 format. Okay, and everything gets sent to again Pro Tools. You have this the immersive track thing, right? So it's a combination of a bed and the object, right? So you have the
Yeah.
four on top as objects,
And
and you
no
have
no LFE.
no, it's 714, sorry.
Oh, it is
714
714.
is a
Okay.
714. So it's a 7-1 bed with a four tops, right? You know, so I would send everything into that. So before it
Yeah.
gets onto that master bus, each group would have like processing basically,
Yeah, wow.
And I've mostly been doing a lot of well, it depends. I guess if I need to, I do a lot of object based stuff, but most of the time it's been a lot of bed stuff. So I kind of
Yeah, yeah.
treat my beds as like my stereo buses, I guess. I don't know if that's right or wrong,
That's how I
right?
do it.
But yeah, well, but like how some people like, oh, you need to use all objects and things like that, right? All
Yeah.
combinations. But like I find them like as good as any. I mean, whether it's object or beds, it's kind of similar, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Um,
I would say that I've heard Steve Jenowick talk about using the object-based beds and things like that, and
mm,
that they did a lot of work to see what sounds better, and I think they worked out objects to them sounded better
mhm.
to do it that way. But then again, like it sort of doesn't matter, does it? It's whatever sounds good is good as always, and there's
Yeah.
heaps you can do in the bed that is still really really immersive. Maybe it's not object immersive,
Hmm.
but it's certainly got that feel. So you can be really creative with it, even a
Right.
bed for sure.
Right. 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 I mean, I think if you do a lot of object-based stuff, right, things tend to be somewhat manual. Let's say you're using an object-based bed, right? So you'll have like multiple plugins on, each channel, right? For example, so you would actually have to load like multiple compressors and EQs, right, for the master bus if you're doing object-based bus, for example.
Yeah.
You know, now if you're using like a bed with a combination of the object on the tops, right? I think things tend to group up a little simpler.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Right?
If it's already mapped that
Yeah.
way. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's
Right.
still a
Right.
1/4 thing that you are compressing or whatever, rather than splitting it up to
Right. Right.
like separate. Yeah. I think it's probably a good
Right.
time to talk about what an object based bed is, if for anyone who doesn't know. Do you want to speak to that?
Object based. Well, so you basically build your bed with objects, and you pen them on each respective points, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So you would have the LCR on the front would be like 3 objects, and then you have the 2 sides, it'd be like 2 objects, on the rear is 2 objects, and 4 objects on the top. That's basically object based bed.
Yeah.
Right?
To the fixed positions of what they sort of say the bed
Right.
is. Yeah. But with the addition of,
Yeah.
in the normal bed, you've got 712, the first 10 channels or the first 10 objects, and that's last to adjust the left and right full side of height. So you don't get the difference between front and back, things like that. So I
Right.
guess object-based bed helps you distinguish more zones, and that's helpful for sure.
Yeah, I guess it's a simpler description would probably be like object based beds, kind of like you're putting out your 12 speakers in your computer. I guess
Yeah,
that's that's how I would think about it.
that's
Right.
right. Which is more like a channel-based thing, exactly like 5.1, or where the channel count is the speakers, where Dolby Atmos is
Right.
not like that generally.
It's like a manual channel versus like what Dolby has created as a multi-channel,
That's right.
thing,
Array.
the bed itself,
Yeah, it's awesome that it came with that. In fact, I mean, they kind of built on what had already been standardized. I think that's really, really smart just when they did it. And of course, all the guys at Dolby are extremely smart. But I think that decision made it extremely helpful to just add on to what we were already used to doing. So it just made it so much easier to get into the format for me, particularly, coming from post. That I was already doing 7.1, 9.1, stuff like that. A lot of 5.1 movies, and then that's sort of the standard, and even still, but now I can still place things in the same positions as I always would, but then just with more options. It's just
right,
very, very cool.
Right. Well, the difference the difference that I actually found was there's a guy in the Facebook group, right, and his YouTube channel's the YouTube channel's name is Going to 11 or something like that. Something.
Yes.
Gone to 11 or something like that.
What's his name?
I can't remember, but like he's on the Facebook group as well. And
I think I know.
He mentioned the difference was, so they did a thing, difference between object based and the bed thing, right? So apparently, object based, let's say you pan something towards that object, right? And you kind of you slowly move it. It doesn't have that, the dispersion it doesn't sound as good as if you're doing it in a bed, Right. So let's say you're putting things in between, like the LCR and the sides, right? Okay, let's say it's like on the 50, like on the wide sides, let's say.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if you do an object-based bed, right, it doesn't travel as well as if you're doing it in a bed.
Is it because of the divergence that is different? Like an object is discrete?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah. So when you're, let's say you're doing panning in an object-based bed, right? Things tend to kind of blur out, because you're in between the two speakers, right?
That's right. Yeah. Right.
So it's better if you're actually panning that particular instrument as an object by itself, then it'd be okay.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's just go back a second to explain for people who don't know what we're talking about. I think, so what you're trying to explain is the difference between putting a sound using an object, which is an individual point source of sound that you place anywhere within the three-dimensional space that is Dolby Atmos, which is represented by X amount of speakers, and it doesn't matter how many. It uses the coordinates of where that object is to reproduce that on whatever sound system. So when that happens and you've got an object moving from, say, one speaker to the next speaker location, there's an in-between area that happens where it uses probably both speakers to approximate the sense of it being in between where you actually physically have speakers. But then in the bed, if it's not used as an object, it would do something slightly different. And it's called divergence, where it overlaps like that. But it's a slightly different algorithm. So that might sound kind of nicer in certain situations. Is that sort of saying what you meant?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
It's very interesting topic. Like
so
how you use this stuff is it's totally subjective, I think, but it's there's so many ways to do it.
I know, yeah, but then again, I'm slowly figuring things out. I'm slowly figuring the differences between the bed and object thing, and how you would actually use what purpose like each technique serves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
and there are just so many. There's a million use cases for all of this stuff, which kind of brings into a new topic here. How would you choose? What kind of technique you're using? This goes for EQ, compression, or any plugin, any placement in Atmos. What would you say is the reason for doing anything at all? Because for me, it's very much about like what is the emotion that you're trying to convey by this move, and that could be in the song, it could be in the mix. But yeah, what is it for you? What helps you decide these things?
Well, okay. Since I'm a stereo guy, right? I'm still kind of stuck in that whole mindset right? You know, like, well, in the stereo field, whenever you're compressing or when you're EQing, when you're processing something, you try to place a sound to that a particular space, for example, right?
Yeah.
So in Atmos is a completely different thing, you know. Like you don't necessarily have to do that to place a sound anywhere,
Yeah.
you know.
So much more
And
space.
yeah, you know. So I think most of the time now when I do process stuff, right, it's mostly for creative purposes.
Yeah.
You know, like let's say I want to have that sound to sound a particular style or whatever, then I would process it. But most of the time now I'm probably using less processing. You know, EQ is still okay. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially when you're putting stuff up top or like in the back, right? You kind of want to like make things more like sound more clear, or let's say, you
Like
know,
high pass it.
let's say you have a binaural settings. Let's say you have a far binaural settings, right? Things that tend to get a bit dampened. You
Yeah.
know, then you would have to kind of like EQ stuff and probably compress it to kind of have things more stand out. You
Yeah. Yeah.
know, but if a binaural settings, let's say you set everything to mid, for example, everything to near, you know, and you're only letting the top to be a bit further, then I think it would probably require less processing, but it all depends on the genre of music. Let's say if you do a lot of acoustical stuff that and you want to kind of create a big space for that particular piece of music, then it will probably require you to like process the sound more.
Yeah, you mean for binaural?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
binaural or like for headphone mix, basically, right?
Yeah.
You know.
I was just going to say about the near mid far thing. Like, I've sort of explained it to people like it's a reverb setting. It's like a how close the reflections kind of thing. Is that how would you
basically? Yeah.
Yeah. Is that the right way to explain it?
Well, nowadays I'm trying to imagine my room. Basically, let's say you're doing a mix in a headphone, right? And I guess this goes for those who don't have an actual room, right? And well, since I have an actual room, and when I do mix on headphones, I try to imagine my room and where my speakers are, right? And so basically, that's going to be my base for like the binaural settings.
Yes.
Okay. Now, in an Atmos room, basically everything is like equidistant, right? So you have the top, the rears, and the sides and the fronts. Everything is like basically equidistant. So basically, there's no such thing as like near, far, or mid, right?
Yeah, that's right.
In a room, right? So it's essentially it's more like a tool, I guess. It's not really just a setting, I guess, for me.
Yeah, right? No, I get what you're saying. It's really just a way to listen to it that sort of still seems immersive enough if you don't have the full setup, and that's kind of its only purpose. It's not meant to be the destination or the final, It's just
right.
a way to listen to it.
Well, like for example, I've been experimenting with backing vocals, for example. Okay, now I tend to place backing vocals in the back, like kind of like a bit. So they're not on the sides, but like a bit to the rear of the sides. Okay, so technically it's supposed to sound kind of like behind your ear a bit, right?
Yeah.
Now, logically, if you place that in the binaural setting as far, then it would kind of like put them in the back, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the case. That's the thing, like, because when you play it back in headphones, it's like, okay, where are my backing vocals? They're in the back, but like they're in the way back.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds
and everything gets dampened out and weird, So what I did was, so I switched the rears in the binaural settings to near instead, and everything sounded as if it's mixed in my room.
It's very interesting. So, I've heard guys that just exclusively do mid or one setting. Far is very extreme. Yeah. So maybe heights.
So
yeah,
because I used to set it like the LCR used to be nears, and then the sides used to be mid, and then the rears used to be far, and the top used to be far.
That's what I used to do too.
Now, yeah, and everything is like gargantuan size, right? But then again, the stuff that you put in the back, it's all gone, basically,
Pretty much. And then your center channel is so loud. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. And then one day I'm like, you know what? Screw this. I'm just gonna like set the binaural setting as if I'm mixing in my room. And of course, the near setting is gonna be like, in your face kind of sound, right?
Yeah.
And but then it's like, okay, let's say you're listening to like R&B record, and the backing vocal is like really wide on the sides, and you can actually hear them clearly. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna set this to near, and everything just worked out fine.
I've seen
it's still spacious.
It's crazy that the one setting is enough. It's funny how that works.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure I understand how that works, but it seems to be the way it works best.
It's funny how that whole binaural setting works, because like in a room, again, you have the equidistant stuff, and then in the binaural, you kind of need to like tweak it out, so that you get both space and also like clarity,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's funny business.
It certainly is. So I wanted to talk to you about some of the equipment and stuff that you are using in your studio now, and maybe where you started from. Like, what was some of the first things that you had, and what are you using now?
Okay, is this like Atmos specific or like just in general?
Go Atmos side of things. I know you were talking about the Neumanns before, but what interfaces are you using to run Atmos?
Okay, so for the interface, I'm on the Galaxy 32 by Antelope.
Yep.
And for speaker management, I'm on the Intonauta 24.
Wow, nice.
The JBL.
Cool. Yeah. Big boy.
That's basically my gear.
Amazing.
Well, I do sometimes I try to combine like the analog stuff as well. You know. I got a Manley Master Passive at the studio for EQ. What else do I have? I got the why am I not remembering things these days? I got a retro. It's a retro compressor, the 500 series. The 500 series retro compressor.
I don't think I've heard of that retro one.
Retro. What is it called now? STA level compressor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like an LA2A, but a 500 series.
Okay. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. I got a pair of API 525s, the EQ.
Are you using this for mixing or tracking?
Both, actually.
Both.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you find the workflow, in terms of being in the box for Atmos and then, converting out? Are you using a patch bay? Like, how does that work for you?
Oh yeah. I mean, I would use them as if I would use the gear, the outboards in Atmos, similar to how we use it in the stereo mix. Basically, well, I mean, not much. I use the outboards mostly on for example, vocals and drums, right? And those kind of tracks usually stay on the left right channels anyway. So I would use them similar to how I would use it in stereo field. In the future, I would probably invest on like some more reverbs, I guess. Outboards.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Currently, I own the Bricasti reverb unit, but it's only like a stereo pair, right? And I think it's upgradable to 5.1 or something like that.
That's cool.
But I would have to buy 2 more modules or something like that, in order for it to connect.
Yes.
It's still gonna be an outboard thing. It's not gonna be a digital thing. So
that's cool.
But at least it will be like an analog kind of reverb unit, but it's gonna need multiple channels, right? So
have you got any plugins like reverbs that are immersive? What are you using like that?
Yep. Of course, the go-to ones are definitely the Liquid Sonic ones.
Love that.
Well, emulation of the Bricasti anyway.
Yeah. Yep.
The cinema. What are they called again? Crap, can't remember now.
It's called Cinematic Rooms.
Cinematic Rooms, and there's another one. I own both anyway.
Yeah,
Cinematic Rooms and Seventh Heaven.
Yes, that's it. Yeah,
Seventh Heaven, Cinematic Rooms. Yeah.
Those are they're pretty much interchangeable. Yeah. I feel like the Cinematic Rooms is my favorite one, particularly for posts. It's just really. But I would say Seventh Heaven is probably better for music. But they're both amazing. They're both really, really usable. So it kind of like if you just have one, I would say either is fine. They're pretty good.
Yeah. For the Seventh Heaven stuff, it's kind of like my extension to the Brickcaster unit.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes me feel better to not have multiple Brickcasties.
Yes.
But the thing is, you can control the Seventh Heaven plugin with the Brickcaster remote.
Really?
You can.
That's
cool.
That's
so you can essentially hook up the remote to the Seventh Heaven plugin, like you can tweak it out like that.
Wow! So, as in, you get like tactile outboard knobs to play with, but then
basically,
wow, that's cool. I didn't know they could do that.
Yeah, you can.
And we're not sponsored by Liquid Sonic. We just love them.
Yeah, man.
It's awesome.
It's good stuff. So those I use, and what else? I have the Isotope ones. I can't remember the names now, though.
I do love Isotope. There's a few things. Obviously, RX is a massive one for dialogue and things like that I do. But actually, they've even got like a free plugin, which I think every studio should just have. It's just really, really good, particularly for Atmos. But when you're working with like mono things that you want to kind of do a bit more with, they've got a plugin called Ozone Imager. It's a free plugin. Have you used that?
Oh, yeah, I know that one. Yes,
I love it. I love it so much. I use it all the time. And it's like a free one, but like it's so cool. I think it's got that stereoizer thing. So it just does it in a really nice way. It's not like this weird hard left, hard right kind of sweep to get the stereo thing from a mono track. It's there's no phase weird stuff going on. It's just a nice doubling kind of thing. And just smooths it really nice. Yeah. So I use that on everything. It's really, really good. So actually, interesting question. Have you got any plugins that are maybe just some random thing maybe no one's ever heard of, or some freebie or throwaway? What's something that you didn't expect to love, but a plugin you use all the time? Just for fun.
Honestly, well, you know what? I recently got this plugin from Eventide that does this like chorus thing, but in immersive format.
Ooh.
That's kind of cool because you can do both doublers, and also you can recreate like an immersive delay thing, and it's also a time-based delay as well. It's called micro pitch, right? So essentially, it's immersive doubler, by Eventide, and it's quite cool because, like any other doubler plugin from Eventide, you can set the delay time, right?
Right.
Now, the delay times both work as a widener, and also like you can do manual delays and stuff like that. So you can do like slap delays and stuff like that with this plugin. Also, you can use it as a doubler. So I've been using it a lot on, let's say I'm trying to widen the like a pad sound, or like a background vocal stuff. You want to go like 7.7. Yeah, you want to go 7.0 with it, right? It's like such a good plugin for it.
That's awesome.
Of course, there's another. There are other delay plugins out there, but it's so pricey,
Yes.
I can't remember the name now either, but yeah, that thing, it's like, I think it's like $300 for like a delay plugin, Well, the one plugin that's actually reasonably priced and it's actually really good, right? Is the Fat Filter Reverb.
I haven't used that one.
Yeah. The Pro R2 is actually, it's 714 immersive format.
Wow.
And it's half the price as the Liquid Sonic stuff.
That's great.
It kind of sounds like, the Valhalla reverb?
Yes. Yeah. That's a favorite.
So essentially, it's a better quality thing than Valhalla, and it's an immersive format. So imagine Valhalla is immersive. So that's what it is.
That's basically cool.
Yeah, it's a digital reverb thing, and what do you call it? And yeah, it's an immersive, and it's half the price of any high-end reverb plugins.
That's awesome.
You know,
yeah,
yeah.
I'll definitely be looking at that one. Yeah, because I've only got a few really. I think that's another key thing. I used to just collect plugins, and I'd have so many to choose from, and it ended up getting just too ridiculous to make a decision.
Oh, I got to stop doing that. Seriously.
Yeah. It's really, I was just a workflow killer.
Like every day,
just scrolling through things all the time.
Yeah.
So
like every day on Instagram is like, oh, check out the brand new thing, this and that. Nah, I'm like, okay, you know what? It's
the algorithm's got us. It knows what we want. Yeah.
Like, for example, I've been thinking about, so I'm on Pro Tools now, and I'm also a Logic user for my music arrangement stuff.
Yes.
And since Logic supports Atmos, like I've been meaning to try it out, in Logic more than in Pro Tools, and actually using the stock plugins, because Logic stock plugins are really good,
Awesome. Yeah, honestly, I do use Logic for pretty much everything. I prefer it to tools and just in general, and that's even for post. So everyone says I'm crazy for that, but that's my honest opinion. I just prefer the workflow, and I've been on it for so long now. It sort of seems like a backward step or a pretty severe sidestep to go learn another DAW again, or when I'm not used to it. It would actually be worse than whatever benefits that DAW could give me. It's not worth it. Yeah. So for me, it was like Logic's where it's at. I do everything recording wise in Logic, and I'm just so familiar with it. It seems like even in pretty complex sessions where there can be a couple of hundred tracks and it's getting pretty full on, I still prefer it. There's a couple of drawbacks, but they are not significant enough to convert me. So that's right. Yeah, I prefer Logic.
The Logic stock plugins, right? Are they like immersive, or is it like a multi-mono thing? Like, let's say the compressor and the EQ stuff,
They're multi-mono.
Multi-mono, right?
Yeah. So like it's
okay.
You'd still probably want, if you're going to really rely on Logic integrated, you'd want to have some other tools. Yeah.
Like talking about multi-mono versus like actually immersive plugins though, like what are the differences for you?
It's not as together. They're not working off each other. It's like individual instances on every channel rather than a collective compressor that is triggering from everything. Like, do you know what I mean?
Right.
So if you had 5 drum tracks and you put a compressor on each of them and have the same settings, and then you send all of them to a bus and then bypass those compressors and just put one on the total, it's going to behave differently because that compressor is getting input from all 5 tracks that, sort of collectively work. And now it's a mix box.
Right.
And yeah, there's triggers from all of those 5 channels, not just the individual channel and then separately compressed another one. Do you know what I mean? So there's a difference there. I think that's how multi-mono works as well.
But then again, are you describing this from an analog world or like a digital plug-in version of
digital? Yeah. So
things.
From how it feels, that's what I would imagine it does. What do you know about it?
I'm still trying to figure it out, but everything sounds great. I've been doing multi-mono stuff, and it's like, okay, it does what it does.
Honestly, I don't have a problem with it. It's just dual mono doesn't behave the same way as multi-mono for stereo, though.
Well,
because you wouldn't get that. Multi-mono is for anything more than stereo. However, it's the same, really. If you have like dual mono, that's like making it mono where they're the same out of each channel. And then stereo is discrete left and right, cool. But then multi-mono implies it's the same as dual mono, but it's not. It's just more channels, but it's actually not. I think it's still discrete channels, putting the instance of that compressor on each of them separately, but not collectively as a whole. There's certainly a place for it. I've used multi-mono on heaps of things, and I don't have a problem with it. It's just that I think it's the limitation of it. Like, it's not like a mix bus that is immersive, because if that is the case, then it's using all of its input on everything to be what triggers that threshold to come. to be used.
Right. I mean, if it was problematic, then guys with object-based bets mixing, right? They're gonna be in trouble for the master bus processing, right?
That's true. Yeah, if the it depends because Logic doesn't have a bus like that. So okay, we need to go back a bit. So in Pro Tools, for example, you can have multiple beds, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that in Logic. You've only got one. You've got your master channel. If you're on the integrated renderer, you've got the master channel with the Atmos plugin, which is
right.
It's like putting a binaural plugin on it or any kind of plugin that just it basically encodes it so you can monitor on headphones like that or in your system. So it's just the encoding software like the renderer is, and because of that, it's different from Pro Tools because with Pro Tools with the multiple beds, you can actually do crazy processing like this. So an immersive compressor on just the drums that contain objects and beds, right? You can actually do that.
Yeah.
In Logic, you can't. You've only got one bed, and you can't separate things like that. And it's so if your objects end up on the master bus, which they do, I'm pretty sure that's still included. So in Logic, because it's all one thing, one master, I think you can put like a compressor on the master bus, and it does include them, but it's only multi-mono, so it's a separate compressor on every object.
Okay,
I think.
All right. So essentially, what happens in Logic is when you have both Pro Tools and the renderer in all one box, right?
Yes.
And you can like master process everything, including the object.
Yes, but if you're using the renderer, you can't
go into the master.
Yeah. Internal. Yeah, if you're using the external renderer, then you've only got whatever the session is. So, for example, actually, this has been a workflow thing for me to learn. I was mixing primarily in the Dolby Atmos renderer, external software.
Right.
So it's using the Dolby Atmos audio bridge.
Yeah.
Send the 128 channels to the renderer and then out to my speakers, monitoring an Atmos. Yeah. So with that, because it's sending to an external piece of software, Logic doesn't know what Atmos is anymore. It doesn't care. It doesn't need to because the renderer is doing it. I'm interfacing that with the plugin that is linked. So doing that, now because Atmos is not a thing to Logic, it's completely unaware of it. Anything I do on a bus is not including everything. It's only what the session is. So inside the session, it might be a 7.1 or it might be a 5.1 session, which is just basically what kind of panner you have. So because the panner might show, 7 pucks or it might show, the 5.1 puck or whatever. But because of that, you're limited. It's not including objects.
Okay.
So, that's the thing, right? It's like which way works for you. And it's always...
That's why I'm doing things in the box too in Pro Tools now, minus the renderer.
I agree. I'm actually going to Logic internal as well. And I've actually completely abandoned the idea of setting up sessions that have to move from studio to studio as well. Because like you with the ad that you did, sometimes have to go to other places. So when I do that, what I've had to do is bring a session and then transfer all of the licenses for all the reverbs and all the things or set up. It's insane to do that if the place I'm going to, it doesn't have all the things I have. And it's not just got to finish it there. So that's a nightmare to try and do that. So what I did instead is I actually built a portable rack. So it's like a 2-unit shock mounted rack with my Mac Studio, the interfaces, a patch bay on the back for all the analog I/O, my headphone amp, like everything, all in this one rack, plug and play now, and it's completely my system, so I don't have to do any of that, and I can work however I want. So that was so much of a change to be able to do that.
Okay.
So have you got a similar situation, or how do you do it?
Well, on the TV ad thing, I on the commercial stuff, I just brought my ADM there basically.
Oh yeah,
and it was a mix check thing, and then I was able to basically use whatever plugins they had.
If you're nearly finished, when you've got an
yeah,
that's probably all right. Yeah.
But I think if I was to work on a post thing, in a big stage, then I would just bring whatever raw material, whatever raw stuff that I have in my computer, and just load them up there.
Yeah. Well, being in Pro Tools
hopefully
better or easier.
Right.
But my
That's why
workflow is kind of exclusive to what I do, despite what the industry tells me is the norm, So that's why I've had to adopt that. But
yeah. Well, yeah, I'm still a Logic user, but like most of the time for the mixes, I don't mix in Logic anymore. I use mostly Pro Tools these days. Like all my dance productions, like like early 2000, late 90s, everything was Logic.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like proven. Let's say you play the material in a club, right? A lot of producers were using Logic or Cubase at the time, right? Not as many Pro Tools user back then because it was way too expensive.
Still true sometimes.
Yeah.
And not avid, but it's definitely one of the more expensive ones.
Yeah. It's kind of like a proven sound, I guess, right? And we're not even talking about vinyl. We're talking about, let's say you print stuff on CDs, right? You play them back in a club. It just sounds, it's got that thing in it.
Yeah.
It's got that attitude. Things are not as open sounding in Logic versus Pro Tools, I think, right? But sometimes you kind of need that, because you're providing way too much information in a mix, right? In a clean mix.
Yes.
Like I've done 96K mixes in Logic and in Pro Tools, and the stuff in Pro Tools just way too much information going on.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I pretty much cap at 48. I don't need to go higher. But
right,
and that's the minimum for Atmos. But it's
what's the standard for movies, by the way? Immersive mixing for movies.
I'm going to say 48 is fine.
48, yeah.
Is people do go higher, but I just can't imagine the need. Because like if you think of a theater, I know we're not directly talking about frequency response, but just in terms of like information and how much is lost anyway. Like a movie theater doesn't really go above 12 to 16K, sometimes lower. Just depends.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't even, so you're getting a lot of smoothing in the mix that way anyway, just because of X curve and things like that. So there's like a natural reverb that happens in theaters, and it's all smeared anyway.
That's what happened when I mixed my ad in the bigger soundstage.
Yeah,
I really freaked out because I was like, "Yay! What happened to my high ends?" Like,
it's because they're
everything sounded fine in my studio, and then like when I went to the bigger stage, I was like, "Okay, what is wrong with my mix?" Yeah. So I had to like retune the whole thing. Yeah.
Did you notice your dynamic range completely changed?
Oh yeah. Everything's like quiet.
Yeah, the ambiances or the things like that always tend to be loud in the theater when I go there. If you're not familiar with mixing in theaters, it tends to be like an equidistant home system, even Atmos or 5.1, whatever. In a home setup where you're kind of mixing to, let's just call it 79 decibels, SPL, things like that. For your calibration, and then you go to a theater set up for 85, which is Dolby 7. That's a totally different thing, and it like the dynamic range definitely changes. So I noticed, so you have more headroom like that, and they push you up. It's like everything just got obliterated in terms of my mix ratios, and you've got to. So now I'm kind of playing for that, but it's also, it's pretty rare that I'm going to end up in a cinema. It does happen. It's, we do play festivals and things like that too. But, in terms of theatrical release and stuff like that, particularly for music or the stuff that we're doing, it's pretty rare that it's going to end up in a cinema. So it doesn't really matter most of the time.
Well, the thing is, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he's involved in a musical drama thing, And so for next year, we are planning on trying to, put out an immersive experience for the musical.
Awesome.
So we're planning on basically setting up a soundstage in the theater.
That's amazing. Yeah, do that. Looking live Atmos now in terms of the audience being there. Like you've got to have a live sound rig that is capable of Atmos.
Yeah.
It's full on. Like it can be done. Definitely people do it, but that's next level, man.
Yeah, that's the plan for next year though. It's gonna be done,
I love that. That's amazing. There's
so
probably
we're
not many
talking
people
about that.
doing that.
That's why, I might need to call someone from Dolby about this and fly him out here,
not a bad idea.
Try to tune it.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of hot. And we're planning on streaming it on YouTube
in Atmos.
Binaural probably.
Yeah. Okay. That's
so that's the plan. It's a very optimistic plan, but we'll see.
Very exciting. Very exciting. I can't wait to hear more about that. I'll have to get you back on the show again to chat about how it went once you've done it.
Well, if you got time, man, fly out here.
Yeah, all right. We'll see you there.
Awesome. Have you been to Indonesia before or no?
I haven't. No, I'd love to. If I'm ever down, I'll definitely come by and see you.
Yeah, man. A lot of Australians in Bali, bro.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've never headed out before, so I'll.
Basically, it's like Australians' second home, man.
It's
Bali.
I feel like everyone I know has probably been to Bali except me.
Okay. Yeah, time to head out.
I think so. Well, I've got just one more thing I wanted to ask you, and then we'll probably wrap it up, man. But essentially, I just wanted to see what has been your favorite experience working in immersive format that has really made you just go, wow, this is amazing. I love what I do.
I mean, basically, when you listen to everything in immersive, right, you have this sort of, it's an overwhelming reaction, to sound, I mean, it goes as basic as that, you can't really compare it, it's no comparison between Atmos and stereo. I mean, it just gives you that, especially from the music part, you get to hear all the details, right? The emotions of the song and, how music gets arranged actually, gets expressed more in an immersive mix, I think.
Completely.
Yeah. And, both the good stuff and the bad stuff.
That's very true. Yep. I'm with you there.
So it kind of gives it that much more fun, I guess,
Yeah.
Right. Because, there's no way around it. Yeah. If you want to listen to Atmos, if you want to listen to an immersive mix, it's two. There are only two ways: either with speakers or with headphones. Okay, and both are going to give you all that detail, right? As opposed to listening to stuff in stereo. Stereo is like, I mean, the appreciation for stereo now is just unbelievably bad these days, right? People listen to mix reviews on mobile speakers, on Bluetooth speakers, and you spend so much time on working on those mixes, and people listen to it on like really bad speakers.
Yeah, not to mention millions of dollars of worth of gear to set.
Yeah, or that, right? And so, it's like a breath of fresh air for me, and it does force you to like, okay, this is how things are supposed to sound. This is, again, it kind of brings you back to, I remember listening to my first Walkman, for example, but the first CD player, let's say.
Yeah.
The whole like sonic quality of music back then, from cassette to CD. That experience is what I'm experiencing now, from stereo to like immersive, Yeah, it's definitely an experience doing immersive mixes because you get to hear more than what you can hear in the stereo field. And it gives you that more that extra ear candy stuff, I guess.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
And you get more emotional with whatever you're working on, as opposed to stereo. It doesn't mean that stereo sucks, but it's just that much more of what can be perceived, I guess.
I think there will always be a place for stereo, but yeah, Atmos is like we said before, a brand new playground for us to explore on, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun going forward.
It's a compilation of everything that we've everything's been built up since mono to stereo. Now it's just the next level thing.
That's right.
We still do mono stuff in immersive mixes. We still do stereo stuff in immersive mixes. It's just that we place them in different places now. So
yes, yeah,
yeah.
Look forward to hearing more about what you're going to do. Can't wait to hear about that live Atmos experience. And
yeah, man. I shall update you on that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that sounds great. And thanks again for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting. Take care, man.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Mate. Catch you later.
Bye.